Welcome to Developing Your Hero's Journey. I'm Melissa Balmer of PetalLove.org, where I create storytelling tools, tips, and coloring pages to help you grow more active, sustainable, and mindful mobility. This video is step number 2 of my online course, Becoming a Storytelling Superhero. In this video, I'm going to help you first discover the heart of your why for the work or advocacy that you volunteer for, and then second, share the steps to begin to craft that why into a compelling hero's journey story. This video is just about 20 minutes long, and to be best prepared for it, if you haven't watched it yet, I recommend you look at step 1, which is my short 3-minute video, Why Storytelling Matters, so you understand the 5 key reasons, the scientific reasons, that storytelling is such an important tool for you. Also, if you haven't done so already, you might want to go ahead and download the PDF worksheet that accompanies this video, step number 3, in the online course of PetalLove.org so that you can stop this video whenever you want, write down notes, and actually do the exercises with me when we get to them. The stories we tell literally make the world. If you want to change the world, you need to change your story. Why should we listen to Michael Margulies? He's the CEO and founder of Get Storied, where he's worked with hundreds of organizations, 15 countries, and trained 60,000 leaders, including people at Google, Bloomberg, Greenpeace, and the UN Foundation. Leaders just like you who are passionate about making the world a better place. And he does this with storytelling. So why storytelling? Masterful storytelling is, quite frankly, one of the most important and powerful tools you can use to help change hearts and minds and turn harmful behaviors into positive ones. And this is really the key I want you to take away from today. Anyone of any age and any background can become a storytelling superhero. Now, we're going to look at how you can harness storytelling personally for the important work you're doing and transform your communications, presentations, and yes, sales. Doesn't that sound like fun? Let's get started. The best stories for you to use are hero's journey stories. These are the stories that uplift and encourage. Think of the classics like Lord of the Rings trilogy, Cinderella, and Beauty and the Beast, or more modern ones like Harry Potter, Black Panther, or The Hunger Games. Of the 7 classic story arcs of all time, 5 of them are hero's journeys. That's right, all stories around the world for thousands of years who are the ones that stand the test of time, fall into these 7 classic story arcs, and 5 of them are hero's journeys. That's how important they are to humanity. So now I'm going to tell you a short hero's journey. 16-year-old Greta Thunberg is a young woman from Sweden who has launched a worldwide movement of school children taking off school on Fridays to strike for climate change. Greta's struggle and overcoming, her hero's journey, is that she suffered a huge depression at 11 when she realized that climate change is real and not much was being done to truly combat it. She was so depressed she lost 40 pounds and stunted her own growth. She didn't start to recover until she decided to do something, taking Fridays off to strike outside of her own parliament all by herself. Tens of thousands of school children are now joining her weekly. This is a screenshot from Greta's Twitter last weekend with her sharing a quote from a new article on her in the Financial Times. Within 1 hour of it being posted, it had been shared over 400 times. And this is the girl who sat at the back of the class and was ignored. And she was recently diagnosed with Asperger's. Anyone can become a masterful storyteller. Yes, even introverts. So your mission If you want to transform your work and make it more powerful, is to discover your own hero's journey stories, those of your network and those you serve, and to develop them into short, compelling pieces you can then share in your communications, presentations, interviews, social media, and more, just like the one I shared with you about Greta. Your hero's journey starts with your why. So let's discover it. Here are some very important questions to ask yourself. And again, yes, these are in the downloadable PDF on petallove.org. The first one is, what's your official origin story about this work you do or you volunteer for? What's the polished version that sounds professional? It's important to have this right out in front of you so you can compare and contrast it with what we're going to talk about next. We want to delve into what might be hidden underneath this story that might be more authentic and compelling. My own official bike advocacy story was that I was recruited into bike advocacy before I ever got back on a bike again. That it took my then friend and now partner, Charlie Gandy, 6 months in 2009 to convince me that I could ride a bike. I hadn't been on one in over 25 years. I knew how to ride one, but because of my chronic pain and fatigue challenges, I thought I didn't have the strength and stamina to ride anywhere useful or fun. I'd forgotten the bike is a strength maximizer. And it's a nice feel-good story, but it's not the real story. I'll share that with you in just a few minutes. Next, when did biking, walking, or taking public transit most memorably give you a sense of freedom, independence, and fun? This can be a childhood memory. For myself personally, I remember the moment my dad told me I was riding my purple Stingray, complete with white banana seat and tassels, all by myself without training wheels, or him holding me up. How about you? And now, this is the heart of the matter. When did active mobility transform your life for the better? And let's dig deeper. Was it a tough or an easy choice? What challenges did you have to face? What struggle and overcoming? How has it surprised and delighted you? And how has it helped you see the world anew? So here's the story behind my feel-good origin story. It's one that I shared, but not very often, and usually glossed over quickly. In 2007, I was a freelance writer and media relations specialist when my car, my old Honda, was impounded for unpaid parking tickets. I lived in a neighborhood in Long Beach where I had to walk blocks to find parking and more than 10 blocks if I came home after 9 p.m. Because I mostly worked from home, and because of my chronic fatigue and pain challenges, I would either often forget to move my car on street sweeping day, or I'd be just too tired to do it. I couldn't afford to pay off the tickets, and I was tired of borrowing money from my family. I was also very ashamed that in 10 years of dealing with chronic migraines and fatigue, I hadn't yet figured out a way to be more financially stable. The tough irony is that I'd wanted to donate my car at the end of 2006, but felt embarrassed to do so. I worried about what my friends, colleagues, and family would think. I gave up my car as an experiment. I could do this because Long Beach had excellent transit. Instead of feeling ashamed, though, what I found is that I quickly felt a great sense of relief, especially when I didn't have to pay for gas or car insurance. And my car-free status was the reason why I bonded with Georgia Case in 2008, who then invited me to be on her team to bid for Bike Long Beach's multimedia marketing campaign. We won that bid and worked on that campaign from 2010 to 2012. It's still one of the most comprehensive marketing campaigns for a bike program of a city that's been run in the country, and it launched a whole new career for me. It might take you a while to get up the courage to write your real, authentic why story behind why you're so passionate about active mobility and sustainable transportation. Do it. Give yourself permission and encourage others in your network, your team, and of course who you serve to do the same. The hero's journey is a story. Of course it is, but what does that mean? It means that it always has a structure similar to a triangle. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Without this, it's not a story. It's just an antidote. And the hero's journey follows a narrative arc. This is simply the structure of the plot, how things unfold in the timeline. The stories that we humans find most interesting and have done so for thousands of years follow a similar pattern to this. To make your own stories truly compelling, you need to map them to this narrative arc. You start off with the exposition, setting the scene. Often, this tells of a normal that gets disturbed, but not always. Sometimes things begin bad with a longing to get better. Greta Thunberg is a smart young woman growing up in Sweden, but she's the sort no one notices. She sits in the back of the class. Next, you have the rising action or inciting incident. This is your hook to catch your audience's attention. Something happens to challenge the hero, you, or Greta. She learns that climate change is real and becomes very depressed. Next is the climax, also known as the turning point. The climax or turning point does three things. It's the height of the story's action, it answers the story's biggest questions, and it marks the beginning of the story's descent into resolution. Greta begins to overcome her depression by leaving school on Fridays to strike outside of her parliament building all by herself. The falling action is when you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but at least one more twist or turn is in the road that brings a challenge. Leading scientists agree that we only have 10 years to cool down our planet's temperature or face dire consequences. The clock is ticking, and Greta knows this. The ending or resolution is what all heroes' journeys must have. This wraps up the story, gives people a sense of hope. It doesn't have to be a happy ever after ending, but it needs to be happy for today. Tens of thousands of school children from around the world are joining Greta's call to action, as well as journalists and world leaders. And I want to emphasize this point. It's so important. You have to share your struggle and your overcoming. Consider this. Without kryptonite, there's no story to Superman. You must be authentic enough to share what you've struggled with and overcome in order to make people care and for them to see themselves in your story. The alchemy begins turning your stories into gold when you map them to that narrative arc and make them short and compelling. This is just a general rule of thumb, but keep this in mind. 1 to 3 paragraphs for email newsletters or print newsletters, 3 to 5 paragraphs for blogs, and 3 to 5 minutes of a spoken word story for conversations, presentations, and interviews. And the magic unfolds when you do these 3 things. You frame your story for impact, you tune into sense memory, and you drop your jargon. Let's delve more deeply into exactly what I mean and how you too can do this. Framing for impact. Even using the narrative arc to map out your hero's journey, it's easy to fall into the trap of sharing too much extemporaneous fluff that isn't interesting to anyone but yourself. By framing your story, narrowing in like a camera's focus, you step back out of the weeds and recognize that the stories that will engage the most people jump in very close to the action. You can do the same. Don't give lots of backstory, just set up the scene very briefly. Next, you tune in to one sense memory. Master storytelling coach Babette Buster, in her fantastic book, Do Storytelling, recommends you zoom in on one sense memory that stands out for you and amplify that. What did you hear, see, smell, or taste? Focus on that and that will set you up nicely to drop the jargon. Replace every acronym and any insider baseball talk with easy-to-understand, interestingly descriptive language. Don't leave people out because they can't understand what the heck you're talking about. Keep in mind that most television is written so that it's easily understandable to the average 10-year-old. And things really take off when you end your story with a clear, easy, actionable item that allows people to participate. Think of surveys, downloadable PDFs with more information, events, blogs to read, newsletters to sign up for, classes, and more. Greta Thunberg is inspiring children around the world to join her. Each Friday, more and more children are joining in. Right now, it's tens of thousands. Soon it will be hundreds of thousands, and more than students are listening. What project or program can you start now to include hero's journey stories with to help galvanize your outreach, inspire your team, and connect better with larger, fresher audiences? And how exactly do you use these stories? You layer them into your presentations and communications just like a cake. Basically, you don't share a lot of data and statistics without a story that illuminates exactly what you're talking about. Again, 3 to 5 minutes for a spoken word story, 3 to 5 paragraphs for a blog, 1 to 3 paragraphs for a newsletter. This is a general rule of thumb, but consider this: the shorter and sweeter your stories are, the more people will be longing to learn about more and want to hear from you. And that's a great place to be. Congratulations! This concludes Step 2 of becoming a storytelling superhero. Step 3 is to complete the downloadable worksheet questions and decide on the hero's journey you want to focus on. Then map that to the classic hero's journey story arc and use framing, tuning into one sense memory, and dropping your jargon in order to draft out your first hero's journey story. In the next video, I'll share more tools and exercises to take this story, polish it, and supercharge it. Yes, you're well on your way to becoming a storytelling superhero. And here are the links to Michael Margolis of Get Story, Greta Thunberg's Twitter, and Bobette Buster's Do Story. Thanks. I look forward to connecting again very soon.